should mute themselves.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Excellent.
Still can't see me, can you, though?
What's that?
Can you see me?
Yes, I can.
Yay, okay.
Hi, Carla.
No kids running around behind you, Carla?
Not yet.
We're going to start here right now. So, welcome everyone. I'm Steve Zylstra, President and CEO of the Arizona Tech Council, and I want to welcome you to our virtual tech speaker series. Today, maintaining critical digital infrastructure during challenging times is our topic. For those of you who are not familiar with the Tech Council, we're a statewide trade association, represent around 800 member companies. We have offices in Phoenix and Tucson, membership-based organization. So if you're interested in membership, please contact one of the staff. We appreciate you all being here today. I want to ask everyone to please put their phones on mute when not speaking. And all questions should be put in the chat area. And the event moderator, who's Kirk Busch, will compile the questions and pull them from there. I want to start by thanking our sponsors for today's event, and I'm going to ask each of them to make a few remarks. We're going to start with our Tech Speaker Series sponsor from the University of Advancing Technology, JC Smith. JC?
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I just want to say thank you to the Tech Council for hosting this event. UAT is the sponsor of this Tech Sector Series, so there are reoccurring events. If you just check the calendar, you can see what's up and coming. But just a little bit about UAT. We are a private tech college located in Tempe, Arizona. For those of you that aren't familiar with us, our campus is off I-10 and Baseline near the old Fry's Electronics and next to the Arizona Grand. We do offer associate's degrees, master's degrees, bachelor's degrees at an accelerated rate. So we do offer 3 semesters a year for our programs. And we just recently launched a professional certificate program. So we offer certificates in things like cybersecurity, mobile application development. We also offer services where we can develop products for your company. So if you're interested in having us work on a mobile app for you, work on a robotics project, things like that, we do integrate with community services as well. So definitely check us out. You can find more information about UAT at uat.edu. And again, thank you guys for being here today, and I'm looking forward to today's presentation.
Thank you, JC, and thank you for being such a great collaborator with the Tech Council.
Of course.
I want to now introduce our presenting sponsor from Cyxtera, David Murphy.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Hi, I'm David Murphy. I'm Senior Marketing Manager for Cyxtera. So Cyxtera is one of the largest co-location companies in the world. We have a global platform of 62 highly connected data centers, brings together more than 2,300 customers and 600 networks in 29 global markets across 4 continents. Cyxtera brings proven operational excellence, global scale, flexibility, and a customer-focused innovation, all together to provide a comprehensive portfolio of data center and interconnection services. In the Phoenix area, we offer data centers in the state of Arizona's Research Park in Tempe, as well as in Phoenix. Our data centers are qualified for the state of Arizona sales tax refund program as well, so that's a nice benefit. In total, we manage approximately 32 megawatts of utility power, nearly 41 megawatts of generator power, 33 networks, over 100 customers call our data centers home for their IT infrastructure in the Phoenix area. Today's topic is obviously timely. We appreciate the Arizona Tech Council leadership and the membership. These are interesting times, characterized by economic challenges, increased demands for some services, and reductions for many others. We understand the stressfulness of the time. We also recognize the power of this virus. Personally and professionally, I wish you all good health and pray for positive outcomes for you, your family, your business, and colleagues. Kirk and the panel have an insightful set of topics to share with you today. I'm real proud to be part of the team at Cyxtera sponsoring it. Thank you for your support. Back over to you, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. And that tax credit you referenced was one of the Tech Council's policy initiatives a number of years ago, working with the Data Center Coalition. So a lot of our members take advantage of that today.
Thank you so much on that.
Absolutely. Finally, our bronze sponsor is Signature Consultants, and Mike Sarda is here to speak.
Thanks, Dave. My source was Signature Consultants. IT campaign.
Your voice is garbled. Does everyone else hear a garbled voice? Shake your head. Yes. You're gonna have to.
Let me try something real quick.
Yeah, it's not working. You know what? Maybe we can. Nope, still not working.
Okay.
Why don't you go on mute and figure that out, because it's
Thank you.
and then we'll have Kirk Busch come back to you later once you get that figured out. Maybe you could put something in the chat box to let us know it's been resolved. And with that, again, I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank everybody for participating in today's event. If you're interested in sponsorship, you can contact the Tech Council through aztechcouncil.org or events@aztechcouncil.org. And with that, I want to turn it over to today's moderator, a longtime friend and member of the Tech Council, Kirk Busch with BigData Southwest. Kirk, it's all yours.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you to all of the sponsors, and thank you to the Tech Council, and especially thank you to everybody on our panel that has stepped up to help provide insight, leadership, and content to this event. I lost myself here. I don't know if you can see me or not.
We can see you just fine, Kirk.
Yes. Okay, Lee's going to control the muting. So right now everybody's muted. So what I'd like to do is go through the panel introductions of our speakers initially, starting with Mr. Travis Cutright, who's the Chief Information Officer for the second largest city in Arizona, Mesa, Arizona, who obviously as a CIO has dealt with about every issue you could possibly deal with during normal business times, and then now especially with the challenge of COVID-19. Travis, you want to introduce yourself and say a few words?
Yeah, hey Kirk, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to interacting with this panel and yourself. I'm the CIO here for the City of Mesa. Been here for the last 3.5 years. Prior to that, I was City of Phoenix, Cochise County, and then in the private sector. So I've got about 30 years of experience behind me in healthcare, semiconductor, engineering, consulting, and local government, and just looking forward to interacting today.
Fantastic, thank you. And the nice thing about your experience is you've got a lot of it all the way from boots on the ground in the chip space. So you know how those electrons move. Our next panelist is filling in for Mr. Jonathan Martone, who was originally on our panel, Lael Hester with Cyxtera, who's also a sponsor. Take it away, Lael.
You muted? Maybe?
There you go.
Sorry, guys, we got to unmute ourselves.
He's still muted. He's still showing muted. Lyle, if you hear us, just hit *6 if you're on your phone, or hit unmute, or maybe he stepped away from his computer for a second.
Well, I'll
Kirk,
move
maybe-
on to
Yep.
move on to another panelist. David Murphy already gave the talk. How about Frank, who's also with the City of Mesa? Frank handles electricity for a number of Mesa residents and gas for almost all of them, right, Frank?
That's correct. Frank McRae with City of Mesa. I've been here about 17 years, got about almost 40 years of experience when you count the time on campus where we had our own electric and district cooling utility. So energy has been my life and my professional career. Mesa's been in the electric utility business since 1917. We bought the system from Dr. A.J. Chandler. So a lot of people don't recognize that Mesa has this little electric utility. We're an island, if you will, within Salt River Projects area, much like the downtown areas of Phoenix and Scottsdale and Chandler and Glendale. They're served by an investor-owned utility, Arizona Public Service Company. So where Mesa is unique is it's a city-owned, customer-owned utility. And so we do a lot of collaboration and partnership with SRP, and we look of them as a real benchmark for how we try to perform and serve our customers. We also have that gas utility that serves about 2/3 of Mesa. The other third is served by Southwest Gas Corporation. And then we also serve some customers down in Pinal County in the Queen Creek area. So spread out quite a bit on the gas side, very condensed in the electric side. It's been quite a experience here at the City of Mesa. It's the first time I've worked for a city-owned utility. So when you try to get someone to focus on pole replacements or gas valve replacements, but they've got an officer involved shooting, it creates a little bit of a disparity in terms of what I'd like city management to prioritize, but it's certainly something that you come to understand and accept and realize and manage accordingly. So look forward to the discussion and sharing a little bit more about the City of Mesa's electric and gas utility. And I also get involved in the City of Mesa's chilled water system in downtown Mesa as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Frank. Carla Moran, that everybody knows with SRP, has also joined us. And Carla, kind of like everybody knows you, so. But go ahead and do your thing.
So I've been with SRP for now 5 years. Most people know SRP as one of the larger power providers in the area, but we also do deliver water, and we are one of the large dark fiber providers in the area also. Before SRP, I was with the town of Gilbert for a little bit, and before that I was at the state Arizona Department of Commerce. So I've been in economic development for almost my whole career, worked on a variety of different projects.
This webinar that I signed up for, so.
So a couple of the projects have been a variety of
anyway, thanks for
from large manufacturers and data centers. Recently working with some of the large co-locations that have located in Mesa. So I look forward to our chatting, but there's a lot that SRP touches, so can talk about a lot of different things.
Fantastic. Thank you, Carla. Last but not least, on the telemedicine side of things in healthcare, Mr. Kent Dix with Life 365.
Thanks. Thanks, Kirk, for having me on the panel today. My name is Kent Dix, and I'm CEO of a company called Life 365, which is here in the Valley. This is our second company, born and raised here in healthcare, dealing with connecting people that are remote, typically at home, to their healthcare provider. And as you can probably imagine, our whole world turned upside down probably about 6-7 weeks ago with COVID-19. Our mission is to connect people to keep them out of the hospital and take the pressure off the healthcare system. We either are working to monitor people at home that are self-quarantined and that have been diagnosed and doing a monitoring and test, or we're going and helping with early discharge out of the hospital to take the pressures off the ICU and the health system. We have great partners with us that are here in Arizona as well, like American Medical Response, which is AMR Ambulance, the largest ambulance company in the world that actually can help with triaging and paramedics that are at the home with the patient and connecting and using our services to connect them back to a call center to monitor them on an ongoing basis. So I'm very interested in this conversation because we're going to be a high utilizer of infrastructure between now and the fall, winter, and spring. We anticipate that COVID is going to get significantly worse in the fall, winter, and spring of next year. And we need to spend the summer preparing for it and beefing up our infrastructure to make sure we have capacity. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kent, for joining us. Lael, do we have you back? Can you hear us?
Lael did mention that he was back on, and
I see him.
Yeah, and his icon was saying he's not muted.
We're losing. I see him. I see his face, but it looks like you still show muted. You can't unmute yourself? I heard something. Is that you? We still can't hear you.
I'll share a little bit about Lael while we work that issue out.
Well, he was doing great until he gave tech support. It must be that Mac thing.
Must be it.
I didn't know data center guys were allowed to have Macs, to be honest with you. I mean,
yeah, well, it's all the software, you know.
Huh?
It's all the software, right? It's not the hardware.
I thought they said real men have droids, but I don't want to get into that right now because he can't even speak to defend himself.
So Lael's actually one of our solution architects, significant experience working in a support capacity and also looking at arrangements and infrastructure solutions for customers worldwide. So we will try to get him back online.
Lael, if you want to just log out and try back in. Yeah, do that real quick. It's fine because we have plenty to talk about, but you are the data center guy, so we need you in this. So come back. Okay, so now did our sponsor get back online? Do we have an opportunity now for Signature Consultants to speak?
He's on the phone. He put in the chat that he's on the phone, so he should be able to speak.
Okay, does he know how to unmute from the phone? Is he the 602 or the 520?
It's *6 to unmute. *6 to mute, *6 to unmute.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
We can.
If you can hear me, blink your eyes if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
See some eyes blinking there. Sorry about the technical difficulties. That's what happens when I have to work from home. So I'm with Signature Consultants. My name is Mike Lasorte. We are happy to be a co-sponsor of the Tech Speaker Series, Tech Sector Speaker Series. We're an IT staffing company based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We moved to Phoenix about 10 years ago because the banks were in a little bit of trouble and Wells Fargo bought Wachovia. We were a Wachovia vendor. 14th largest IT staffing company in the country, the largest privately owned, about 3,000 consultants with across the board skill sets, some specialties in ERP, a lot of infrastructure, and we support a lot of the big clients around town. We're always in the top 5 here locally. That's us. We're trying to adapt to work from home. We have 500 people working from home now, and we're happy to get back in the office eventually, but we're just going to keep going. We do a lot of infrastructure stuff. That's why I want to see what you guys have going on. We can support a lot of that, a lot of those skill sets. Thank you, Steve. Happy to be here.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Oh,
we can.
Excellent.
We've got you. So now, no worries.
Welcome back, Lael.
What about your camera? What about your camera?
I see myself. It shows as on. Can you not see me?
Can see you now.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
It takes teams a minute to put the video up of whomever's speaking.
I apologize for that. I use Teams all the time, every day, and it was working earlier. So sorry about the technical difficulties. Thank you for having me. As David mentioned, my name is Lael Hester. I'm an architect with Cyxtera. I've been in the data center infrastructure space and the telecom space for most of my professional career. So seen a lot of interesting challenges, but nothing like COVID-19 and the quarantine and the working from home nature and the technical difficulties that are associated with that, as we just saw. Thank you.
More reasons to put more servers and more racks and more data centers.
Yes, sir.
which is a perfect segue to my first question. I'd like to direct the first question to Mr. Travis Cutright, who, without any question, probably has the most moving pieces in keeping everything together, managing all the IT and infrastructure for a city as it relates to public safety, 911, everything. So, Travis, do you want to talk about how this pandemic and this current situation's kind of turn your guys' world upside down and what that's done with your infrastructure demands?
Yeah, definitely been interesting. Fortunately, here at Mesa, we've got a strategic plan that we have in place, and we try to be progressive and innovative. And I say that because when this crisis hit, we were able to pivot fairly quickly to get everybody at home and working from home. And we were in that position because of the relationships that the Department of Innovation and Technology has with our partners like Frank McCray over in Energy Resources and that. And we try to partner and understand how we can help make them more efficient and make them more productive in that. And so to pivot to the teleworking model, although it was not something that the organization was necessarily accustomed to, we were able to pivot and become fairly productive quickly. Not only that, so the organizations, some of the departments had to change how they were doing business and even the types of business they were doing. For example, our parks and recreation, all our facilities were shut down. Our libraries were shut down. Our arts and culture was shut down. And so we had some COVID money federal monies that came in, and we needed to distribute out to businesses and citizens. And so those departments pivoted. We stood up Mesa Cares, and within a week, we had Mesa Cares set up, a call center stood up. My team was pretty much working around the clock trying to get call centers in place and that. And so it was a mad scramble, but everybody worked together for the good of the organization, and we were able to put folks that were no longer utilized in their roles that they were hired for into different types of roles. From a technology standpoint, we expected that, and we had prepared for a demand on bandwidth. And what we actually saw was the bandwidth usage here at the city, our incoming pipes, the bandwidth usage went down, which surprised us. We thought it might go up, but it's probably because folks are working, well, clearly because they're working from home and leveraging their internet connections for a lot of activities that they do during the day. We had to ramp up our cybersecurity training. We've got a program in place, and we do monthly phishing campaigns and that sort of thing. But we had to make folks aware quickly that new types of attacks were coming in, leveraging the COVID-19, under the COVID-19 cover and that. Yes, Kirk, you telling me I'm number one, or do you have something for me, Kirk? Okay, that is a finger up. So we started educating folks and sending out types of information to be aware of, and types of phishing attacks that may come through and that. And so through this process, one, we learned more about our infrastructure. Two, we were pleased to find out how well positioned we were. Three, we needed to make sure from a cybersecurity standpoint, we were making folks aware and making sure that our infrastructure was protected as we moved folks out and working from home rather than in the office. So.
Fantastic, thank you. Let's stay on the City of Mesa here, and Frank, why don't you chime in on the issues that you had to deal with as it related to the infrastructure issues and everything to do with the pandemic.
Thank you. Travis's team has done a really outstanding job helping technology challenged people like myself get connected, get able to work remotely, and not drop the ball in the way I was initially panicking about. So we do have some other people in our department that are technology challenged, and we've managed to figure out a ways with his team helping us in most instances how to stay connected, how to stay engaged. So it's definitely been a different way of doing business. I've lived and worked through tornadoes and earthquakes and hurricanes and floods, and none of those cumulatively seem to compare with what we've been working through the last several months. So the electric and gas utilities are obviously critical and essential infrastructure. So we've had to maintain functionality through this period of time. About 3/4 of my department are field employees. They're on backhoes digging trenches, putting in gas lines. They're climbing poles or working out of bucket trucks, keeping poles in the air and wires continuing to deliver electricity or meters, those kind of things. So much of our field forces have been minimally affected. Initially, there was a lot of things that we were doing that in our normal course of business might expose our personnel to infections. So when we do meter maintenance on the gas side, we typically have to shut down the customer and go inside the home and do inspections. And so we've stopped doing that type of work because there's not really a reason for us to, unless that meter is broken, there's not really a reason for us to go and replace that meter and expose us or our customers to those type of risks. So we've backed off of that. We have used some devices where we can change the meter without shutting the customer down and having to go into that home to do the inspection. But for the most part, we've changed that type of operations to what truly is essential and critical, and deleted the preventive maintenance from our work schedule, and it's been mostly corrective or repair maintenance. There's been a significant amount of work in the downtown area of Mesa, a lot of redevelopment going on, and so a lot of multi-story mixed-use development going on. We're building an ASU. So one of the challenges that our department faces as a part of the city is the City of Mesa puts the burden on those contractors to come up with the safety plans for the work that they're doing on behalf of the city. And so as a result, we have to comply with those contractors' safety plans. So right now in the downtown area, we've got 4 different contractors working. So we essentially have 4 different safety plans to comply with. And fortunately, all of them have started establishing that masks are part of the PPE. But in some instances, they may require surgical masks, where in other instances, they may only require cloth masks. So, but we've gone to a skeleton staffing. I come in typically 1 to 2 days a week. There's still certain processes within the city that require an ink signature. So we've managed to accomplish mostly an automation of that, and digital signature, but there's still some issues. We've not really seen, Travis's team does a great job on the cybersecurity side. So unlike some of my colleagues in the small public power industry, I don't have to really worry that much about cybersecurity because Travis's team does a great job on that. So I'm more worried about the physical security of things. So we're looking at things like drones and different ways of remote surveillance with cameras, those kind of things. So, and we also have had a lot of requests for putting in aerial strand mounted equipment for the deployment of 4G and 5G antennas. So we're also making sure that how the city responds to those is consistent with FCC and state law expectations, but we're also making sure that we don't put any of our infrastructure at risk as well. So I know from our prep for this discussion that telemedicine is going to rely upon those antennas a lot. So we really need to find a way to partner on where those antennas go and how we put them to its maximum use without compromising what the original purpose of power poles and street lights and other vertical infrastructure is. So thank you.
Thanks, Frank. One of the things I want to circle back soon on, but I want to get through everybody quickly, is how this is going to affect the budgets going forward and the hiring going forward, and how the mix of technology jobs and types, might have changed. So if you guys could be thinking about that as we keep going forward, because that's a big deal right now too, right? Is how this new is going to change everybody's career paths. So, but next I'd like to call on Carla to talk about, there again, Carla, like she said, has to deal with a lot of issues, and not only on the power side, but also the largest, I think the largest dark fiber supplier in town. I think they've got more fiber than anybody else in the ground, and obviously they got to keep water on. That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need water. Water's
Yeah,
good.
it's kind of important, keeping the power on, keeping
Need some
water flowing. So we're very similar, like Frank was saying, a lot of people are in the field, but there's 2/3 of our employees are at home. I'm one of the 2/3. And I thought we would be slowing down with requests from large companies looking to locate, but we kind of really didn't. And we've seen an uptake in the data center area. We've seen some data center providers, large co-location, that had looked at our market a couple of years ago, bought land, and now thinking that they're going to start moving forward with builds. So it's interesting to see how this kind of reinvigorated, as I've heard there was 44 million people that are on Teams, and that could explain the technology difficulty. That Xbox usage was up 700%. So, people are keeping busy while they can. And all of that goes back to the data center, and putting in infrastructure is where we come in. And we're having to start building some more infrastructure to meet these demands. There's larger density in these buildings. And so having to add new facilities to meet them, new requirements, is kind of where we've been moving forward. We've had a lot of new requests for new facilities, and that hasn't stopped. So I see that kind of progressing. A lot of the data centers that we've talked to have had strong demand, and they continue to see strong demand. They don't think it's going to really fall off after people go back to work, because they do believe there's a new normal that we'll be operating in. So we as a company are moving forward with putting in new infrastructure. We have critical projects that we have slated that we will be working with. You do mention budget cuts. That is a concern moving forward. We are a public utility. We've seen some of our usage drop in certain sectors. So what does that mean for us as a company and budgeting? But all these large providers are, they're spending the capital to put in a lot of this infrastructure. So we're moving forward to help them meet these demands.
Fantastic. Thank you. Kent, you want to talk about how you've probably seen the biggest uptick in business with your telemedicine support? You want to touch upon how your world changed as of middle of March, early March, middle of March?
Immensely, it's changed. So there's a bunch of different issues that are coming up, probably around infrastructure. Supply chain, a big issue as well, to be able to get technology and solutions that we need to prepare for the fall, winter, and spring. We keep on talking about the new normal and talking about flattening the curve, and we've seen a lot of the presentations that are coming out to show that capacity now in New York City is actually probably down 30%, right? So they can actually have excess capacity. But I see this as a tsunami that's going across the United States right now. It's going to hit the heartland, which is doing right now, the meat packing plants, the large, insurers and employers that are out there. And then we're preparing for actually a large wave in this area, but also in the LA region as well. California region as well. So part of the thing we're trying to do, we're trying to make sure that we do just-in-time care and trying to get connected solutions out, outside the hospital area. And the things that you guys are, been dealing with for years and years and years, you're used to dealing with infrastructure, enterprise infrastructure, and building it up at a specific location. Now we're going to have to take all that infrastructure and move it home. Everything's changing. Food gets distributed differently. Healthcare supplies get distributed differently. Medical content gets distributed differently from that. So when we talk very practically, and I want to monitor people from home, I'm typically dealing with a senior population and an aging population and an underserved population as well. So they may not have access to the most state-of-the-art technology, but if they do, they may not also be able to use that technology efficiently as well. I also want to try to connect to people cost effectively. So when I'm looking at technology, it's not just cellular and 5G. I may be looking at LoRa or Sigfox or other, long wireless technology that's out there that allows us to be able to get into rural areas, right? And areas that may not have access to wireless infrastructure, right, as well. So how do we did this years ago. We connected to we did this with Peterson Zaw, the Navajo tribe up in northern Arizona. We connected using Space Data Corporation to have our devices talk to a balloon that was 60,000 feet in the air, creating wireless spectrum. We were in a canyon. The patients were in a canyon. They were plugging into a car charger, and once a day or twice a day, they could actually take a glucose reading and upload it to the balloon. It would go to a data center in Window Rock or Page, Arizona, so it could be monitored by a nurse instead of them having to drive 60 miles each day just to see if they're okay. They were dealing with people that had no power and electricity and no wireless spectrum, only limited wireless spectrum, like 1 or 2 hours a day from that balloon that went over across it. Those are the things that we have to deal with, from a healthcare perspective, and trying to get connectivity to people that may not have access to technology, may not be in a wireless area where they can get wireless connectivity, to try to keep them out of the hospital and keep the cost down, keep the demand down as well. So we actually try to serve, three types of patients on an ongoing basis right now. We try to serve what I call the Chris Cuomo use case, which means that you've already been diagnosed. You're at home monitoring. You want to keep out of the ER or ED. You want to be connected to potentially a call center or to a loved one to make sure that you're doing okay. Looking at things like, do you have a fever? Do you have respiratory issues? Do you have loss of taste or smell? Are you over 65? Did somebody around you just get COVID-19 and now you've been exposed to it from a contact tracing perspective? We want to actually monitor the Chris Cuomos of the world so we keep their pressure off the healthcare system. Then we want to actually work with the health systems to be able to take people out earlier and move ICUs to home, move healthcare and bedrooms to home. Because I guarantee you, the way we're looking at the stats right now is that we saw a max on our healthcare system in this go round. We'll probably lose between 130 to 140,000 individuals. When we go into the fall, winter, and spring, we are preparing to lose 1 million plus individuals with this. And those hospital systems are going to be max. So we need to move that infrastructure home over the summer timeframe, and we need to get to the supply chain as well to match that demand.
You're gonna be busy.
We're already busy.
Yeah, you're gonna be real busy. How do you see the staffing mix and the staffing demand going forward? Since I'm gonna, instead of going back with that question with everybody else, I'm gonna hit you up with that right now. What do you see going forward in a staffing demand side of things?
I think people are going to have to put a new hat on, right? That's out there. I think there's a lot of need to be able to get people that are traditionally doing something at a job that they went to every day to now actually volunteer or actually work in a new capacity to try to keep people out of the hospital and at home, right? To be able to do that. Whether it's, it's interesting. People would say we're running short on healthcare providers, and we will during the fall timeframe, we should bring retired doctors and retired nurses or volunteers out of this. Well, we're not going to take those people and put them, especially our vulnerable, aging, retired, healthcare doctors and nurses, and put them into an environment where they could catch COVID. They're going to do this. They're going to sit behind a computer terminal at home, and they're going to be looking at 30 to 50 people that they're monitoring on a regular basis and see who's red, yellow, and green, and to go through and say, I'm going to deal with Sid today because Sid has an issue. Let's see if we can keep him actually, somewhat stabilized so Sid doesn't have to be transported to the hospital. Interesting enough, the people that we work with AMR Ambulance, they have now it's 2,000 now, ambulance drivers and paramedics that are in quarantine because they've been exposed to the virus from that standpoint. And that's very, very costly to our system because as we're starting to spend through these people. And we just had a webinar last night on testing. There's no proof yet that once you contract COVID, the COVID virus, and you build up the antigen or the antibody to it, that you are not going to either be spreading it or you're going to be not getting it again, right, as well. The biggest thing I would say from all this that we need to talk about is how do we get people back safely to work, right, from this? How do we test on a regular basis to get people back safely to work? What is the employer's responsibility in getting people safely back to work? What is the employee's responsibility? Can an employee go, I don't want to go back to work because I don't feel safe, right? And I want to work from home. So we have from a staffing perspective, we have a lot of issues to cover around C19.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be, I hate to it sounds so cliche, the new, but it's a substantially new paradigm for all of us, for sure.
Yep.
Now, the guy on our panel who has a responsibility for the brains of all of this, our data center provider, Lael Hester. I'm sure your world's changed quite a bit. So if you could chime in here.
Yes, thank you, Kirk. It really is a new normal, and we really tip our hats every day to our frontline workers. The front line of the data center industry, it's really the operations teams that are there on site, keeping mission critical infrastructure and applications running for companies like Kent's. So it's affected us in a number of different ways, and I'd like to talk about a few of those. So really, based on the different types of customers we have, the workloads, the applications that are hosted in the data center, we're seeing the two ends of the spectrum, right? So some companies that are saying, I need more infrastructure, I need more capacity, I need it yesterday. We're sending you all these servers and storage arrays. We need to compute all these new data lakes and this massive amount of data that we're getting for testing. Maybe it's a video game company, people are sitting at home, 700% increase in Xbox utilization. So we have some companies saying, please get this equipment installed as soon as possible. We need it up and running as quickly as we can get it, but we can't be there ourselves, we can't travel. So that's when our operations teams and our remote hand support will receive that equipment, get it rack stacked, cabled up, connected to the networks to power, and they're off and running. The other side of that is companies who are saying, don't touch anything, we can't get there ourselves, it's crucial that our applications stay up and running, we don't want to make any changes, please make sure that our internet connectivity is stable, our private connectivity is stable, that the power is there, and that these workloads maintain the resiliency throughout the crisis. So resiliency in the data center is really, really important. We do everything we can as an industry to make sure that there's diverse network connectivity, diverse power supplies coming into the abilities, that the power grid is crucial. The amount of infrastructure we have in the data centers from a generator and transfer switching perspective is enormous. That's really where a lot of the cost comes in. So, Kent mentioned cost-effective supply and support. One of the things that we're doing for our clients is that we're significantly reducing the cost of that remote hands gold support service because our clients can't come into the data center. So we're ensuring that they get the support they need at a significantly reduced rate, and they can keep their applications up and running. You know, looking forward, crystal ball, what is the new normal going to look like in the data center industry, in the tech industry? It's very clear that many of us will be working from home for the foreseeable future. Even once we get through the pandemic, you know, enterprise businesses, organizations have realized that there's a significant cost savings. Workers can be very productive in certain capacities working from home. What needs to support that? I mean, residential internet connectivity is critical, right? Applications such as Microsoft Teams have to be able to support massive influxes in users, and also the training of employees and workers. People have to become familiar with the technology, with their devices. How do you overcome last minute technical difficulties like the one that I just experienced? So that will become the new normal. We think that a lot of companies will, you know, not renew office space leases. Maybe shared space becomes more popular if people aren't too concerned about contracting different viruses and spreading different illnesses. But really, it's all, our focus right now is resiliency. It's maintaining the availability of the applications, the data sets, the workloads that these mission critical services like telehealth in particular need to keep society running as smoothly as possible right now.
Fantastic, thank you. Let's go back I'd like to go back to Travis and hit him up on how he sees now, you know, with all these moving pieces, the entire, you know, planning process with all the rest of his colleagues at City of Mesa in going forward with respect to budgets. Is it going to affect your tax revenue? Are you going to have to make, you know, major budget changes? How's it going to affect, you know, the mix of the budget? And then what does that do for potential job opportunities for, you know, other tech folks? You know, one of the biggest things that the Tech Council does, right, is connect folks, you know, to do business and manage their careers and have opportunities. So I'd like to, you know, ask Travis what he foresees there, and maybe touch a little bit more on the Mesa Cares thing, because that was actually, you know, pretty phenomenal how quickly you put that program in place. Bill Jibginiak, your colleague in economic development space, was on a panel with Carla and I was that 2 weeks ago or last week, and he talked about that with the Arizona Energy Consortium. So Travis, do you feel like chiming in a little bit on the outlook there?
Yes, I mean, you said a lot of things and asked a lot of questions. And my initial response was going to be yes, and I don't know. But so with regards to how it's going to affect Mesa from a revenue perspective, you know, we don't know, but we're planning for the worst. And Mesa, as you know, is one of the largest cities, the largest city in the country that doesn't have a primary property tax, and so we rely heavily on sales tax revenue, and so during spring training is a time when we've got an influx of additional revenues coming in, and this whole pandemic and everything really broke loose, and all the shutdowns happened, you know, right in the beginning of that, and so we don't know, you know, our insights into the revenue, sales tax revenue lags by 2 months. So I think we're just now seeing our revenues from March, and the good news, I mean, I guess, is March appeared to be flat with the previous March. So I think we were probably expecting to see something worse than that. But I mean, we don't know what April looks like, and we don't know what May is going to look like from a revenue perspective. So we're planning right now on each general fund departments looking at cutting 10% out of their budgets, and with the exception of public safety, and it's a 5% there in preparation for the what we expect from a revenue perspective. And so what does that mean from a staffing standpoint? The largest part of our budgets are personnel costs, and so one of the first places we're going to look to hold on will be vacancies and then we'll see how it goes, and if revenues are better than we anticipate, then that'll be great, and we may be in a better position to talk staffing. If it's worse, then we may get through our vacancies and start looking at at other positions, unfortunately. But we're hoping that's not the case. But with something like this, and with it being unprecedented, you really don't know what it's going to look like until the numbers come in. I don't know if people like yourself, Kirk, was sneaking out under the cover of darkness and going out and frequenting bars and spending money. And no, I'm joking there, but
I wish.
Yeah. So I would suspect that folks were buying. They still need groceries and different things like that, and so folks are buying something. So what does that look like? I mean, I don't know, but the way we do business going forward is definitely going to change. We had a meeting with the city manager the other day, talking about bringing folks back into the office and putting together plans to transition back in the office and what that looks like. And one of my comments was that, hey, we saw that staff can be productive, highly productive, teleworking. So maybe we don't go all the way back to bringing everybody back in the office, and have some sort of mix there. And so we're still trying to work all that out. As we cut budgets, the services that our residents expect, the expectations never decrease; they only increase. And so how do we, as an organization, continue to provide the services that our citizens expect from us? And so that's going to require us to be more resourceful and efficient as an organization. Our budgets will for sure decrease, and our demands for service will increase, and we don't have an option of not doing something. So we need to figure out how to retool and be able to provide services, and that's where a department like ours, innovation and technology, to provide services in an efficient manner, you have to rely on technology, and you have to rely on changing processes and that sort of thing, and being innovative. And so we're definitely expect to be fairly busy going forward doing those things. With regards to the Mesa Cares, the COVID relief monies, I think the Mesa had a pot of money that came in and needs to be distributed out to help small businesses and our citizens of Mesa. And so how do we effectively distribute that money out in a manner that's equitable and there's a timeline on when the money needs to be spent. And so the mayor talked about we're building this airplane, or building this airplane while we were flying, or something. What was that analogy, Frank, that he used? It's we're building
flying the airplane while we're building it.
There you go. And so that's kind of what we're doing with this Mesa Cares. We knew we needed a call center. The small business portion of it, we needed to be able to take in applications and be able to review those and figure out how to award money and that. And so we were building applications and going back and forth with the business and with legal, trying to make sure that we got I's dotted and T's crossed. We got food, you know, I'm trying to get food to the citizens, and that was another component of it. And just building technology to support all of those efforts. And this all happened within the last few weeks, right? And we just went live with the business reemergent, portion of the Mesa Cares on Monday. And I think as of yesterday, at the end of the day, we had something like 274 applications for money that was in the $3.8 million range, you know, the requests were. And so yeah, we had to build applications on the fly. We had to get staff trained up that have never done those types of jobs, you know, managing call centers and taking calls and understanding the requirements of, you know, of the cares and Mesa Cares and all those things, and do all that in a short period of time. So it helps when you're nimble. Mesa's a fairly large organization that does function in a nimble manner a lot of times, and which is helpful in times like this.
Yeah, it's I always had CNBC on in the corner when I was working, when I had a chance to work from home. Obviously it's on all the time now. And there's lots of discussion about the whole office space side of things, whether or not, you know, what that's going to do to the entire commercial real estate industry. You know, the restaurants that might not survive this, and how that's going to change everything. And then I have some friends that say I'm not leaving my house till there's a vaccine and nobody has COVID anymore. Kind of like, you know, when it's in the same position polio is. And then other people, you know, are willing to run out and say, well, if I get it, I'll be fine. So to watch the economists and the smart guys all try to model what's going to happen, I think the smart guys are all kind of in the middle going, I don't know. You know, we're going to have to deal with it as it comes.
Right.
So, and then because a lot of our old models don't even apply right now to how we did any kind of economic forecasting. So, which I think there again even speaks more to how infrastructure is going to be needed more constantly to have real-time information all the time, right? So we can gauge those things as they happen. I'd like to ask Carla what she sees going forward. I mean, I love the new economic development push in the data center space, but like a lot of municipalities feel about data centers, they're great for construction projects, but there's not a lot of W-2s inside once we build them. What are you seeing in other economic development space with respect to, let's say, manufacturing or power plants or anything like that might shed some light on what people are thinking from an economic standpoint?
Sure. I mean, to your point, you know, there is a lot of questions on the office, but I spend most of my time on some of the larger energy-intensive clients, so manufacturers, and a lot of those clients are concerned about their supply chain, so they're trying to figure out how to diversify their supply chain, localize their supply chain. So you might see things that have been traditionally imported, may not be imported anymore, and reshored. There's a lot of discussion on the actual equipment that goes into data centers, all the processing chips, and a lot of the equipment that it's currently being sourced from other countries. How is that supply chain? Is that supply chain reliable? How far are we behind on delivery on those equipment? And so there's a lot of discussion how we might be looking in the next 12, 16 months with those type of equipment. And those companies are now considering, do I need to reshore? Do I need to be closer to a source? And I think a lot of them are considering that right now. We've seen a lot of the tech companies thinking that they need to relook at the risk and how can they mitigate it. So there's going to be a shift. There's been a lot of talk about how the skilled workers are going to have to shift a little bit. There might not be as many office jobs or restaurant jobs in the near future. So what does that look like? It was interesting. One of the recent inquiries that came into the office was a company that's looking to produce PPE in the Valley, and they really want to get in quickly. So I think that's the first sign of the supply chain trying to get closer to the source. So I think that's going to happen a lot. But on terms of some of the construction side, so you see a lot of these big construction projects still moving forward. There's concern that the supply chain and the construction industry is going to be lagging, so projects won't be delivered on time. And so I think we don't see it right now, but probably in a couple of months, we'll see the lag in some of this in the supply chain really catch up to us and have a delay on infrastructure projects too. SRP has been monitoring our supply chain, and right now we feel like we're in a good position to make sure we maintain a reliable grid. That's obviously key for us, but also helping our clients helping our clients that provide critical infrastructure, helping them then do the same for what they needed. So similar to the data centers, making sure that they're up and running. So it's been top of mind for us as we move forward. But it's been interesting to see how it's been a shift in the economic development world and where projects are moving towards and what they need from a community and how they need talented workforce, but also now near population and within easy commute or within easy areas of population. So being close to Southern California definitely helps us because you can supply that market quite easily from Phoenix. So I think we're going to be competing against a lot of projects for the Southwest, but I think it's going to be hopefully, I mean, I'm very hopeful on this, that it could benefit Arizona because we do have a lot of skilled labor within the state and especially the greater Maricopa region.
Do you have Elon Musk's cell phone? Because I heard he's not happy in California.
He's not. I know Chris Camacho's made a call out to him. I think he tweeted at him too. So I think there's been a lot of communication. It's definitely one of those projects that we weren't happy we lost the first time around. So I'm sure it would be nice to get. I don't think.
Yeah, but I don't think we lost it. I think that was wired. It was one of those deals that was wired, both in both Fremont and I think in Nevada. But as things change, that would be fun. And I couldn't help but cue that up. Maybe we could have a little wrestling match between Barry and Chris now that Barry's in
Sacramento.
Yeah, so
could be fun.
What do you think? Huh?
I think we can probably figure out how we can arrange that.
What's that?
I was gonna say Barry's always good for wrestling, so.
Yeah. Do you foresee it changing the big reload guys and how they might look? You know, if you got folks back east looking for other places to expand, will this situation change in any way their process? The relocation process and looking for. I mean, did some regions handle this better than others? I mean, are people exploiting that from a relocation standpoint?
Yeah, there's some concern. You want to go out marketing that we still are a viable place and talk about how we're responding. You don't want to be tone deaf though to the whole what's going on in the area. So there are some communities that aren't going to bounce back as well, and I think that's a concern. We don't want to come out sounding that we don't know what's going on in the world. So there's still things moving though, and it's interesting to see. Normally people come out for site visits. And so we thought technology is going to change the way we look at site visits. Well, there's still people that are old school and want to hop on a plane. So I have a site visit in 3 weeks. They're flying out here. So I think some people will create a new normal, but I think it's, it's interesting to see that technology has helped. We've been able to do site visits virtually so far. So I think there's a bit of a mixture that's going to occur.
If I could jump in there on the site visit comment, Cyxtera is actually doing a lot of our data center tours remotely, virtually now. So most of our clients, prospective clients included, don't want to come to the data center. So we have different camera environments, different people. We talk about putting on different hats. Our data centers and operations staffs have become production engineers overnight, and they're doing a great job of it too. So, we have some billboards up in the data centers with critical infrastructure, one-line diagrams. We have some photographs of areas that are hard to get to or hard to see from a camera. But we are doing live virtual data center tours, and so far so good.
What do you see from the remote management perspective, like you were talking about before, where they're asking you to make sure the stuff stays up and running and it's resilient, but are you seeing more requests for them to be able to do more remotely inside the data center?
Oh yeah.
With your customers?
Significantly. The remote hands gold support service, it has increased, I'd say 300-400% depending on the location. So again, we've dropped the rates, but the teams on site have done an incredible job. They're also somewhat short-staffed. We are trying to minimize their exposure as well. So it's not like we're just sending as many people to the data center as possible. It's been a bit of a skeleton crew, and those men and women have been responding admirably. They're getting the work done, and it's so far so good. We talked a little bit about what the new normal is going to look like. People bringing home their infrastructure, bringing home their workloads. I think I saw a question in the chat about, where is a good place to, condense your applications and workloads, and what's a safe way to do that? What's a resilient way to do that? Data centers are by nature hardened facilities that are literally designed, built, and maintained to withstand natural disasters, pandemics, whatever the world can throw at us. So the data center industry as a whole is holding very strong, if not seeing an uptick in demand, as Carlo mentioned as well too. So, we are fortunate to be one of the business industries that's doing well and will likely weather the storm fairly positively. And we expect enterprises and government institutions as well to realize, well, hey, instead of trying to, run our own data center and office building potentially where people have to go in and, manage hardware, it could make sense to put that into a designated facility like a data center.
Do you guys have any immediate information on what that might do, like to your staffing requirements or your hiring plans or your business plans yet? Or are you guys still, like a lot of us, just waiting to see some daylight to even use the planning word?
Like you said, the smart people are still, undecided. This is still a relatively new thing for everyone. So we're trying to keep things as status quo as possible, both from an availability perspective, also a staffing perspective. From now, the operations teams have seen a significant increase in demand on their workload, but there are some other people maybe who aren't quite as busy. So we're just trying to maintain the existing staffing levels, make sure that everyone is available to get back to work as quickly as possible. We're looking at different ways of, training certain groups to do different things, such as the operations teams doing virtual tours. So we're trying to, we're a technology industry. We're trying to innovate. We're trying to, look at where the demand's coming and what the needs are today and what they're going to be tomorrow and next year, and be prepared for that as well.
Fantastic. One of the big issues that has come up even more now, especially with like what's going on with our Native American friends on the Indian reservation, is the whole rural broadband issue. I live in Mingus foothills, but I just so happen to have MTE fiber. Thank God, that I could have a strong connection. Mark Goldstein is on the line, and I Skyped him, asking him if I could just put him on the spot and have, because he's the chairman of the Arizona Telecom Information Council. He's also one of the key drivers in the Arizona Broadband Stakeholder Network Initiative, which is in concert with the state and the broadband. Mark, are you on there? Can you speak a little bit to how the efforts have kind of beefed up? And Carla, I'm not sure how much of your fiber is rural versus local, but you might want to chime in after Mark. But Mark, do you want to chime in here a little bit and talk about the efforts in the rural broadband space to get, everybody online?
I can I don't know if he's on right now, but I know there's a huge.
Did we lose
effort.
Mark?
Yeah, I don't know if he's on, but
Go ahead.
There's a
Perfect.
huge effort
Go
on
ahead,
there's a huge effort to bring broadband to the rural areas. There's quite a bit of federal grants that the state has gone after. We SRP we don't have fiber outside of our service territory. Most of our fiber is to help help our system and monitor our system. So we work with others and trying to figure out how we can help. So we've been tapped a couple times to bring in some expertise, but it is a big lift, and we are a very geographically large state, which makes it a little bit more challenging. But there is Arizona Commerce Authority has several people dedicated to this effort. So we're hoping in the future we'll see some significant changes in the rural area.
Yeah, Jeff and Marissa have both been on all our calls for the Arizona Broadband Stakeholder Network, and they're doing great work. And everybody's making some immediate efforts to make immediate funding available for that. And it's times like this that, before high-speed internet was a luxury. Now it's literally, in some cases, life and death. And from an educational perspective, I think amazingly critical. Mark's Skyping me saying he can't unmute himself. I don't know if Lee's still on the call. If you could give Mark some tech support.
Yeah, if Mark is on a phone, you need to hit *6 to unmute yourself.
I would imagine Mark would be logged in from his command center. I mean, he has his house is practically a data center. He's Skyping saying not on phone.
Without seeing what he's doing, there's no way I could help him from here. Sorry.
I was having the exact same issue. I saw myself as being off mute, and everyone else saw me as muted. So.
No worries. I'm sure Microsoft's working on that. Throw some more. Maybe you gotta host some of the hyperscale stuff there, Lyle. That's what you need to do.
Sure.
So Mark can't chime in. Can you turn your video on, Mark? Could you do sign language and we'll translate? No, Mark's nowhere. He's Skyping me and he's just nowhere. So not really sure why that's doing that. So I don't know if anybody's seen in the chats, but if you go to the chat window, I think it's time for a little Q&A in our panel. So I'm not asking all the questions. I see, I don't know if questions here. We have any other questions? I think Lael was addressing a few of them that were in there. Is there anything companies can do to prepare for the fall? What are some suggestions things can do on great infrastructure and organizations? You kind of spoke to that a little bit, didn't you?
A little bit.
Mark's Skyping me some more, but Mark, I think, unless you can chime in here, Mark, I think we're just gonna, I see you. But, okay, let's go back to Kent real quick. Kent, you want to chime in on the rural broadband issues and how critical it is on what you guys are experiencing and trying to provide telemedicine services with people who have limited access to broadband, or what you see there with people trying to get additional broadband in the rural areas?
Hey, Kurt, this is Kent.
I can't.
Sorry, so you can hear me. So my microphone was off for quite a while too. I was going to say, one thing I wanted to chime in and say really quickly is that there's a $200 million grant, FCC grant that's out there that's kind of tied to the broadband initiative for telehealth. So I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but healthcare facilities that are in need of telehealth can apply for the $200 million grant or be part of the $200 million grant.
What are the terms of that? What and who qualifies for that?
It's health centers that are people that have needs, with a patient population can apply for it. I've seen grants, $1 million, $2 million plus. I think the largest one's been 2.6 million that's been granted out there. But if you're a community that's taking care of, I don't know if FQHCs qualify, but if you're a community that's taking care of patients under a telehealth program, you can actually get equipment and connectivity paid for under those programs.
So what kind of demand are you seeing, or how are your people trying to address the rural telemedicine issues at this point in time right now?
So we are big after trying to go after the rural communities. Sometimes we do it through partnerships with Walmart and some of the local rural hospitals that are out there as well. Like I said, we have, you know, a partnership with AMR. They are in rural communities. They are trying to get connectivity from homes into their nursing call centers. We have kind of two tiers of connectivity that we provide. One is a wellness check that kind of goes back to a wellness check-in call center that's non-medical, non-emergency. It's somebody that calls in the Chris Cuomo kind of use case, somebody that calls weekly or a couple times a week to a patient just to see if they're doing okay. We've seen that call center usage being used with home health care, with independent living facilities, where we're worried about, like my mom and dad are in an assisted living facility, to be able to call on a regular basis just to make sure that they're okay. We do that as a family, but if somebody doesn't have family, they can have a call check-in just to make sure they're okay and that they don't have a fever, that their care providers are wearing masks, that they're wearing gloves on a regular basis, that they're being taken care of properly. The emergency side of it, or the nurse side of it, is done through AMR, right? So we're using remote connectivity to get into those rural areas.
Fantastic.
You know, I think speaking of remote areas, when we look at the Internet of Things and IoT and patient tracing and patient tracking, you know, it's a bit of a controversial issue, but using, you know, cell phone geofencing and location tracking to maybe monitor certain population movement, certain people's movement, is something that we may see more of in the future. You know, any sort of big data analytics, machine learning, analyzing the massive amounts of data that's being generated from the different testing and all the different, you know, the pharmaceutical companies racing to develop vaccines and medications. That all has to be processed somewhere. So, you know, where are those workloads going to be processed, where they're accessible by all of the doctors, the scientists need to access the data. You know, there's so many different ways that we can look at being prepared for tomorrow, being prepared for the unknown. And really, I think it's casting the net as wide as possible, looking at different technologies, you know, pursuing different solutions in parallel, not in serial, and making sure that we have as much data as possible, as much information to make informed decisions off of.
So that's what I was going to tell you really quickly, is that, you know, there's a company that's out of California that is called Kinza, and you may have seen them on the TV. But Kinza, you know, started probably about 5 years ago, just doing thermometers. And what they're about is they're giving thermometers, connected wireless thermometers, out to new mothers, right, for babies and for families, and really kind of looking at using temperature to try to get ahead of the flu, right, to do this. Well, Kinza's got over 1 million thermometers spread throughout the United States now. And if you think about how the CDC works, the CDC gets their information from doctors' offices and hospitals, and lo and behold, maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, they're saying, hey, flu is breaking out in Bentonville, Arkansas, right from that. With Kinza, they're able to show heat maps, to your point about data, right? And we're working with a big company, I can't tell the name, it ends in Oogle, but it takes in big data feeds, and they've got about 250 different data feeds coming in, and one of them is for temperature from Kinza, and other ones are from devices that we kind of bring in from blood pressure or respiration or weight or, you know, spirometry or peak flows or ECG. We want to look at these data points. Kinza was able to look across and see that, you know, Florida 3 weeks ago, sorry, not Florida, but New York 3 weeks ago was amber. And so was Chicago, and so was New Orleans, and so was Washington.
but Florida was bright red. I mean, bright red, right from that. And it becomes a bit of an issue when we have an elderly population. Arizona was almost all amber, right, or dark golden from that.
Right.
Bit of an issue because we have an older population, right, that's in Florida and in Arizona too, very highly vulnerable. So data is going to be the key. When I'm talking to our representatives and senators and government officials, they're saying, yeah, connected devices are great, be able to keep people at the hospital and be able to reduce costs. From a bioterrorism, from a pandemic, from an epidemic standpoint, having those data points that are in the home connected wirelessly on a regular basis, I mean, look what we just lost in the economy, trillions and trillions of dollars that we should be investing in connected devices, IoT devices, to get that data on a regular basis so we can do surveillance ahead of time, right?
That's a great point.
It's a really good point. When the epidemic first broke, I guess one of the counties in Northern California actually contracted with Facebook to do some real-time monitoring once they put the stay-at-home orders in place with folks that had their Facebook location services enabled. And they could see immediate results on if people were really staying home or what their movement was. I mean, we all have privacy concerns about all of this, but it is, we can allow location services or not. It's how we're driving with Google Maps, how we know there's, an accident ahead of us because they've allowed location monitoring and sharing. But those are potentially powerful tools. Yet at the same time, like you said too, it's, a bunch of more devices to hack. So it'll keep the cybersecurity crowd growing for a long time. It sounds like we might have Mark back. Mark, go ahead.
Can you hear me now? I've dialed in.
Yes, we can, Mark. We can hear you now. That's like a Sprint commercial, but that's T-Mobile now. So
it is. So do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead and touch it. We're running over. So if people hang up without, because we're over our 4:45, but and I want to let all the panelists kind of chime in at the end. But if any of the panelists have to leave, we understand because we're going over. But Mark, go ahead.
Sure. As to the power lines, Carl is of course right. SRP only really goes to the Eastern Mining District, but APS goes a lot of other places. And land last year, State Land Department, in a very interesting move, enabled use of their utility right-of-way for fiber and transmission. So I do chair the Arizona Telecom and Information Council. We pivoted 6 or 7 weeks ago and turned something we were doing into a weekly COVID-19 broadband and digital access team. We have about 35 or 40 people every Monday morning at 7:30 from state agencies and schools and libraries and otherwise. So we're working Corporation Commission, Leah Marquet Peterson, and all sorts of folk there. So it's become the place to exchange information, though the telehealth people centered out of the U of A have formed a telehealth broadband access team as well. So different things occur. One of the big things is for libraries to extend their Wi-Fi beyond their borders. Cisco, for example, just funded a half dozen rural libraries with hardware and installation to do that. They've always been popular places, but now the libraries are extending the reach and the hours during the day that they allow their Wi-Fi to bleed out. Obviously, the end goal is more at the community level for people that have limited access now or no access to get access, but we're working on all sorts of initiatives. And of course, there's going to be a big role of federal bucks coming, hopefully into infrastructure among the many things that Kent Dix mentioned, the telehealth, $200 million. There's telehealth money all the time. And the University of Arizona has been, for decades, a world-class visionary and leader in telehealth. But so on the land department site, there is actually a really interesting resource which is a interactive Wi-Fi hotspot map for the state that shows you all of the public access Wi-Fi from libraries, from Cox and AT&T and Frontier, though they're a little troubled in their bankruptcy right now, and others, but you can actually go turn on layers and find all the freely accessible access points. I can get that link and a few links like that, a couple of resource pages to Lee, and always glad to have people who have a core interest in broadband reach out and connect. Again, our Monday morning meetings are the place to be for that.
Thanks, Mark. Really appreciate that. And yeah, we'll get some of that information out to this crowd for sure. So if there's no other questions, we can just run down the list real quick of our esteemed panel to kind of leave us with some inspirational closing comments. Mr. Travis Cutright, do you have anything and you want to share any pearls of wisdom on as we shut this thing down?
No, I would say just be ready to think of the world differently. We all know that. Be open to changing how you functioned in the past. Don't worry about how we've done it before, but how we need to accomplish things going forward, and things will be fine. The world's not going to go back to what it was before just because we know how to function differently in that. And so that'd be my pearls.
That's a good pearl. Frank, I lumped the Mesa guys together.
Circling back a little bit to what Travis said about the budget impacts, and I think Carla will probably confirm this, but most of your utilities have seen changes in revenues. Our gas consumption and electric consumption has decreased measurably. Our residential consumption has increased, as you can imagine, and our commercial and business and consumption has gone down. So how that will impact our budgets is still yet to be seen, much like the sales tax. And part of Mesa's financial structure is oftentimes the utility revenues that go to support general fund services is called a pseudo property tax because, like Travis said, we don't have that primary property tax, which is the secondary property tax is what's used to fund the debt service on bonds that are issued for cities, and then the primary property tax is what's used to fund general operations like libraries and police and fire and parks. The other aspect that utilities are going to be seeing is we've been under a not terminating service for a lack of payment, and so there's quite a unbilled or unpaid bills coming due at some point in time. And so especially coming up on the summertime, utilities have been either regulated like APS or managed like SRP and Mesa to not terminate service when it gets to be the summer cooling season in the Phoenix metro area. So those types of programs are going to be magnified. The financial impacts on utilities are going to be magnified by what's happened with the virus. And so there is some CARES money that could be applied to that. That's part of what the program is for Mesa CARES program. So not directly tied to the infrastructure management issue, but I thought it would be important information to share.
You want to chime in here, Lael?
Sure. Quick closing comments. I think that we're all going to focus on resiliency, both from a technical perspective and also from a community perspective. We're all going to have to figure out ways that we can contribute differently than in the past, operate our businesses differently, our families differently, being careful of ourselves and of each other, and adjust to what the new normal of the world is going to look like for the foreseeable future. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us and filling in on such short notice also. And no rehearsal here whatsoever.
Great panel.
Kent, you want to chime in with some closing remarks?
Yeah, similar to what everybody else has kind of chimed in and said, is that, I think that from an infrastructure standpoint, we've just got to take this summer really to prepare. I mean, our team normally stays inside anyway during the summertime because it's hot as heck out and gets our work done for the fall. But we got to prepare for increasing 5G access. I don't even care if it's 4G, right? If it's still out there, putting anything that we can put together. From a technology standpoint, IoT standpoint, I don't need 5G, right? So if we've got other, IoT wavelengths we can use that can go longer and get to people like Sigfox or LoRa or other things that are out there, we need to implement those pretty quickly and get server capacities up, because like I said, we're preparing for a storm that's coming in the fall, winter, and spring. I hope I'm wrong, right? A lot of times I am, right, from that. But we can't sit here in August, September timeframe and saying, I wish that I'd ordered 250,000 thermometers. I wish that we had more capacity. I think we're going to go this direction anyway. How we get food delivered, how we get retail delivered, how we work. I mean, today Twitter said, if you want to work from home for the rest of your career with us, you can do it, right, from that. So they'll have one presence in wherever they're at, San Francisco, and they'll scale down their operations as well, which will put a tremendous impact on the commercial real estate business and infrastructure as well. But I think over the next 3 or 4 months, I think that we need to get more testing in place. I think we need to get more infrastructure in place. And I think that we need to keep the economy going from that, but we need to be prepared for a big event.
Thank you. And of course, I got the dogs chiming in.
That's okay. FedEx must be there.
Thank you so much. And thanks for joining us. Carla, maybe you could close us out here with some, and maybe get the kids and the dogs barking too.
My start, my coworkers. No, I completely agree with what's been said. I think, luckily, from what we've seen, we've been a really resilient community. And so I think that's going to be the key moving forward, and having to be agile. And I think we have the ability, our communities have responded really well to the challenge. It's moving forward and figuring out how to operate, especially preparing for the future. It's uncertain, so I think that's part of the issue is, trying to figure out where we're going to be is kind of the impossible point, but really figuring out how we can be moving forward in a very pragmatic way. And I think Arizona is really set up for not to do well, but to make it through this. And we're a strong community, and it's going to be an interesting time. The next, some people say a couple months, but from what it looks like, it's probably going to be closer to a couple of years where we're going to be going through. It'll be challenging, but we're a resilient community. So.
And folks, like everybody we had on this panel, help with our resiliency tremendously. Thanks for everybody sharing everything they have, and thanks for all of our attendees, and thank you to the Tech Council for putting this together. I'm not sure if you can hear me because I'm losing some video here.
But we want to thank you too, Kirk. This is Deborah. We want to thank you for putting the panel together and doing such a good job. And thank you everyone for being on the panel as well as attending our virtual event.
And with that pile of thank yous, I think I'm not in control of this. I can leave the meeting, but I think we'll thank everybody for attending, and look forward to seeing everybody online the next Tech Council event or any online event. And can't wait till we can actually do it in person very soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.